Let's take you to another one of those landmarks as we continue to celebrate the anniversary of the adoption of South Africa's constitution. You heard Aisha refer to it. The constitution drafted way back in 1996. Its adoption today, all those years ago. It was a turning point, of course, in the history of the struggle for democracy in this country. The constitution, considered by many people to be one of the most advanced in the world. It's been amended 16 times, though, but still remains, of course, the overriding law of the nation. And Khayelihle Khumalo, you're joining us outside, as I said, another one of those landmark buildings in South Africa. Constitutional Court, I believe, is where you are, near the Constitutional Court this morning, and that is where it really all comes down. It's the sharp end of the very document we're talking about, isn't it?
Well, that's right, Gareth. So this is quite a very symbolic place in terms of the interpretation of the Constitution. It's the final arbiter when it comes to the law, but also a lot of significant things really happened. And it was a watershed moment when you look 25 years ago, you know, the adoption of this particular law of the land, and also really just containing quite a lot of significant issues around the rights of South Africans, economically, socially, culturally, but also very key institutions like the Chapter 9 institutions that are there to protect South Africans and making sure that their rights are not grossly violated. But also it was quite a very significant moment because it happened as South Africa really experimented with democracy, its new dispensation. But of course, practically, it's a very lovely document. But 25 years down the line as to how has it changed the lives of South Africans, how has it made an impact, it still remains a massive question. But Gareth, we've got an opportunity to speak to the former public protector, Madonsela, and this is what she had to say about some of the very critical issues still facing South Africa.
We have failed to be purpose-driven. How many times have you heard leaders in this country mention the three goals in the preamble? The goal of creating a country that is based on democratic values, the goal of being based on social justice, and the goal of being based on fundamental human rights. So if our leaders were to always ask that question, for example, when they were passing BEE laws, they should have asked the first question, will this make us a more equal society? But more fundamentally, who of the 60 million people will benefit? And of the ones who are not going to benefit, what's our strategy for them? And I think we have therefore been transactional sometimes in doing things. Good intentions. So if there's anything we're going to change, it's not going to be the Constitution. It's going to be, if we're going to draft a law or a regulation on COVID-19, let's ask ourselves, how will it impact on our goal of becoming a country based on social justice? And of the 60 million people who will be affected by this regulation, who will benefit mostly and who will be disadvantaged mostly? Is that what we want? If that's not what we want, is there a better way of regulating this? If there isn't, what will be our compensation strategy? For example, one of the compensation strategies, even though they came late, but it was the grant, the 350 Rand. It's very little, but it is a compensation strategy. Hence, we've asked government to continue it.
As Professor Madonsela speaking to us a little earlier here on eNCA. Kaya, if any of the viewers missed that interview, I'm sure you can go and look for it on our YouTube channel. Also, you can go look for it on eNCA.com. Let's talk a moment, if we could, Kaya, about the democratic values, the social justice the Professor mentioned, but it's the fundamental human rights. And let's not forget, while we all speak to analysts and experts about our constitution in South Africa, it's the regular South Africans that this constitution is meant to uplift. They're meant to protect the ordinary South Africans, some 60 million of them. Have you gotten a sense of what the general public has to say about the Constitution?
Well, I mean, Gareth, it really depends who you speak to in South Africa. So, For example, when you look at the backlog around service delivery, we know that the provision of so many services, the water, electricity, and many other things. So it's quite important for them all the time to understand that it's important for their constitutional rights to be respected, but also it's quite important to reflect a bit on the issue that the Constitution has been tested so many times in South Africa. So we're just outside here, the Constitutional Court. When you look at the current situation, facing one of the very key inquiries, trying to look at the issue of corruption headed by the Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. We've seen the former head of state, former President Jacob Zuma, define this particular constitutional court. So these are some of the challenges that do continue to really dog the experiment in South Africa when it comes to the democracy, but also in terms of the constitution itself as the supreme law of the country. But a lot of South Africans do know that it's there, it exists, but also when you look at other issues as well pertaining to the legal rights, we know that the courts are quite expensive in South Africa, as much as you do have legal aid, but oftentimes the access, that's always a key issue.